This episode is made possible by our sponsor, Landmark College, the college for students who learn differently, offering comprehensive supports for students with ADHD and other learning differences, both on campus and online. Learn more at lcdistraction.org.
Hello and welcome to Distraction. I'm your host, as you know by now, Dr. Ned Hallowell, and I am truly happy, thrilled, jubilant, joyful, and jumping out of my skin to welcome back one of the favorite people in the world of ADHD, one of the true leaders and benefactors and givers, and someone who's always going to bat for our cause. Just a phenomenal woman by the name of Jessica McCabe, and you all know of her wonderful YouTube or website or all of the above, How to ADHD. Jessica, How to ADHD McCabe is truly, she's an angel in this world of ADHD, and I just can't tell you how thrilled I am to have her here today. She is going to give us a little mini lecture because I don't want to take any of her airtime with my boring stuff, and she's going to tell us the latest on ADHD and creativity. So without further ado, welcome to one of my favorite people, Ms. Jessica McCabe.
Thank you. This is an episode that I've been wanting to do on the channel, the YouTube channel that I do for years, and we're finally tackling it, which is ADHD and creativity. I've always known that ADHDers are more creative. We hear this a lot, but I wasn't sure why or how exactly to use it, because it also seems like, we have all this creativity, but like, what are we supposed to do with it? How do we actually make this useful to ourselves and, finish the projects we start? It's great to be creative, but like, we can use that creativity in really productive ways, and we can use it in really destructive ways, right? Anxiety is a form of creativity. I think you've talked about that. So I really wanted to take a look at this research. And so I've been working with my research team on the channel, and we found some really interesting stuff. First of all, creativity is not something that has been researched a lot in general, and especially in regards to ADHD. There's not enough strength-based research out there about ADHD, to be honest. But the research that we do have is really fascinating. Dr. Holly White, HOLLYWHITE, studies creative cognition. And she's actually done several studies showing that ADHDers are actually better at using creative thinking processes than those without ADHD. And she summarized her findings. There are 3 components that she found of creative thinking that ADHDers tend to be good at. And one of them I already knew about. I've been hearing about this for a while, which is divergent thinking. So basically the ability to come up with a lot of ideas, a lot of different possibilities to the same solution. This usually happens kind of spontaneously, just thoughts popping into our head. It's not really focused all the time. It's just, oh, I have an idea. Oh, I have another idea. I have another idea. Brainstorming almost. Then there's actually 2 others, which are interesting. One is conceptual expansion, which is the formation of new and unusual associations to existing concepts and knowledge structures. So like, ooh, there's this thing that already exists and maybe this thing that already exists, but what if we put them together and make something even better, make something new out of that? We're really good at that. And we're also really good at overcoming previous knowledge constraints. So resisting the constraints of prior knowledge, meaning we not only, are divergent thinkers thinking outside the box, we're often not even aware there is a box. We are not even restrained by the fact that there is a box because we're just not aware of that in the moment. We don't think that way. And one of the cool studies that demonstrated this, I find fascinating. They took a group of neurotypical people and a group of ADHD people, and they told them the same thing, which is draw an alien fruit, like a banana or something. Draw a fruit and make it as new and original and creative as you possibly can. And so both groups drew this fruit. And the neurotypical group tended to draw things that looked more like the fruit that we know, but with alien characteristics, whereas the ADHD group drew things that were completely new. They didn't look anything like fruit that we have here on Earth. And that is really cool. That's a really wonderful thing in today's world where we're trying to constantly innovate and come up with new solutions. That's a great thing to have on your team. And it's not like this comes out of nowhere. The traits that contribute to creativity are the same traits that affect us with ADHD. Distractibility helps us think in a nonlinear manner. It helps us come up with all these different ideas. If we're not focused, we're more likely to come up with different ideas, different solutions. We've got a lot of thoughts bouncing around in our head. And impulsivity encourages risk-taking. And if you're going to come up with a new idea, if you're going to try something new, you need that. You need to be able to take that risk. And in fact, the research that we've found has shown that ADHDers have more real-world creative achievements, which is so cool because I know so many ADHDers and I know how many things we don't finish, and we can beat ourselves up for that all day long, right? Like, oh man, like I suck at this, like I'm never going to finish it. Someone asked me once when I was doing this to myself, like, I started this and I didn't finish this, and I started that and I didn't finish this. And my friend, everything he starts, he finishes. And they were like, okay, how many things does your friend start? And that blew my mind because it's so true. It's really easy to judge ourselves for not doing enough, but it's like, how many things are we trying to accomplish here? Yeah. And that's the flip side of it, is just recognizing where our impairments do start to come into play, because that can get in the way of our creativity. Because if we do end up feeling bad about ourselves because like, oh man, I like, what's the point of starting something? I'm never going to finish it. We want to encourage ourselves to be able to follow through on these things, to be able to finish it. If we come up with a ton of ideas, we want to be able to find them later. I had so many ideas for this podcast today and I lost them. Okay. Like, so at some point it's easy to be like, well, what's the point? What's the point? I'm just going to lose it. I'm just not going to finish it. You know, my ADHD is just going to get in the way. I had that the entire first year that I started the channel, like this voice in the back of my head going, you can't do this. You'll fail. Like, you're just going to give up on this, just like you always do. So it's important that we get support for our creativity. It's important that we recognize we are creative and that creativity isn't just about being good at art or being good at drawing. It's coming up with novel ideas. It's coming up with solutions. It's problem solving. Coding can be really creative. You can be in science and math and still be incredibly creative as somebody with ADHD. And so recognizing that we are creative, recognizing that we have these strengths of divergent thinking and overcoming previous knowledge constraints, and then also recognizing we're going to need support. ADHD can get in the way of completing any task, and that includes creative ones. So we might need a little help with our executive function. We might need some coaching. We might need medication to help us actually focus. I write a lot better on my medication than I do without. And I know a lot of ADHDers don't take medication because they're afraid that it's going to make them less creative. We don't have nearly enough research on this, but the research that is out there actually says while medication can help with focus, it doesn't actually negatively impact divergent thinking. It does not affect our ability to come up with creative ideas. And that's huge because that means we can still come up with creative ideas and have the focus and the motivation to actually do something with that, which is wonderful. And I'm not saying like, I know that some people might say, you know, no, I've tried it. I'm definitely more creative off. We don't know. We don't know how it works individual to individual, but overall doesn't seem to affect it from the research that we have so far, which is really reassuring. The last thing I want to point out is all the ideas that we lose. We have this beautiful ability to come up with a million ideas, but then they're just lost in the ether. So there was one thing that Chad actually has an article about children and adults with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, chad.org, I think. On their website, I found a thing about mind mapping. Mind mapping being basically you start out with a concept and you put it in a circle in the middle of a page, and then you come up with ideas from there. You branch out and you do another circle, and then you do another circle, and you do another circle. And it's a way to kind of organize our thoughts so that we can come back later and they make some sort of sense. I'm never going to be able to do a normal outline. I can't organize my thoughts very effectively, but just being able to put them on paper in a way where at least they're in a circle, like at least they're somewhat organized and they're branching off from other ideas. It's a great way to do what I naturally do in my head in a way where I can come back and actually come back to those ideas later and remember them. And here's the important part, get help narrowing them down. Because while we're great at divergent thinking, thinking of lots of ideas, we are not any better at convergent thinking, narrowing down those ideas. So this is often why we end up with more ideas than we know what to do with, and why we end up starting so many projects and not being able to follow through. Because we're great at divergent thinking, no better at convergent thinking. Of course, we're going to end up with more ideas than we know what to do with. Of course we are. But we can get help narrowing those down.
As always, you're so spot on. Narrowing it down is a big deal. My last book, when I handed it in, it was 125,000 words. And the final product that was published was 48,000 words. So my editor, a brilliant woman, helped me narrow it down by cutting well over half the book, well over half of what I'd written, well over half of those brilliant, darling ideas of mine I had to cut and let fall to the floor, and it's a much better book for it. But I needed her help to help me, discard the extraneous. And as a result, it's the shortest book I've ever written, but it's probably the most pithy.
Oh, it's wonderful. Your book is absolutely incredible.
You wrote an endorsement for it, so you know.
I did. I got like 15 pages into this, and I realized this book will save lives. Read this book. This is amazing. You
are so sweet, Jessica. But what you said, I love your reviewing the research, and I'll have to look up Holly White. And, I've always said, impulsivity, one of the cardinal symptoms of ADD. What is creativity but impulsivity gone right?
Yeah.
You don't plan to have a creative idea. You don't say it's 10 o'clock time for my creative idea. They pop. They come impulsively, spontaneously.
Yeah, and that's actually the other really important part. And I've noticed it too. I've gotten more on point with my schedule, and okay, now from this time to this time I'm going to create this, and then this time I'm going to do that. And I realize it's actually getting in my way a little bit because I'm having that focused time of writing, but I'm not getting the unfocused, just letting my brain wander time that I need to be creative. Yes. So I've noticed that is actually hurting my creativity. And so now I know I need to build that back into my schedule. We do need time to spend focused attention on our projects, but we also need that time where we're just wandering around and ideas can pop up. Absolutely. That is where our strength lies. That's where the beauty is. That Absolutely. Distractibility, that brain wandering. Chronic brain wandering, Barclay calls it. That's what makes us creative. We don't want to completely get rid of that. That kid staring out the window daydreaming in school, don't completely crack down on that, because that is valuable, especially in today's world. Yeah, no,
that's when the famous story of Kekulé discovering the benzene ring. He was sitting in his study smoking his pipe, and he blew out a smoke ring, and he imagined it as a snake eating its tail. And suddenly he said, that's the benzene ring. It was how to make sense of I don't want to get into organic chemistry, but it was a huge discovery in the history of organic chemistry. It came to him by watching a smoke ring and imagining that as a molecule, a snake eating its tail.
Yeah, that's so neat. And so often we beat ourselves up like we're just wasting time, but no, we're not.
No,
this is
not
valuable.
At all. No, it's totally valuable. And it's playful, and that's really sort of the engine of creativity is play. Well.
But I have to thank you, Dr. Hallowell, because you're the first one that told me that my brain was creative. Your work on how creative ADHDers are. I read that about creativity being impulsivity gone right years ago, and it made me realize, I am creative, and these aspects of ADHD, they are strengths in the right situation. And
you
with
are
the right
so creative, Jessica. You're just a bundle of creative energy. It's amazing to watch. Well, thank you for taking us on a trip down creativity lane, and a lane where you have a mansion. And thank you again for joining us. Okay, well, that's our show for today. To learn more about Jessica McCabe, you can go to her website, howtoadhd.com, howtoadhd.com. Distraction is created by Sounds Great Media. Our producer is the wonderful Sarah Gurton, and I'm Dr. Ned Hallowell. Thank you so much for listening.
The episode you just heard was made possible by our sponsor, Landmark College, the college for students who learn differently, offering comprehensive supports for students with ADHD and other learning differences, both on campus and online. Learn more at lcdistraction.org.